What is going on, everybody? We are live with Dillon Carter from one of the co-founders of Go Aura, the Aura Repricer that you guys all know and love. Today, we're going to be digging in a little bit into the workflows automation feature that they have recently released. But of course, before we get started and before Dillon gets a chance to say anything, please make sure that you smash the like button or the subscribe button wherever you might be watching this. I know we are in FBA Today, my VIP group, and the YouTubes. So please make sure to gently smash the like button just for the respective algorithm. So Dillon, thanks for taking the time, man. I appreciate you doing this the day before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, of course, man. By the way, just realized what your shirt says. Love it. Huge fan.
Oh, thank you.
Some office respect.
I'm a big fan of the show. We've watched it probably, we probably watched it like 6 times. It's just on in the background a lot.
That's awesome.
So, Val, what's going on? Rita, good to have you guys here. So Dillon, tell me a little bit about workflows. What made you guys, want to do this? And then we'll kind of dig into the meat and potatoes of what it is and why people need to start digging into it.
Yeah. So at a high level, I'm a huge automation dork. We all know this if you've ever seen me talk at all. Automation tends to come up at some point, and I came to a conclusion where, regardless of the repricing tool that you're using, there should be like secondary features that exist around it. And to clarify what I mean by that, what I'm saying is the act of repricing itself is automated. That's kind of how it works, right? But there's still things you have to do as a user, as the seller, right? You still have to make decisions. You still have to do a little bit of admin work. And I don't think you should. To be frank, you have a lot going on already. I get that. And so I started to play around with this idea of workflows, which now is finally here and it's concrete, which is awesome. But I started to design this idea of, what if we could give a Zapier-like approach, or if this then that approach to Aura, and then what would that look like, and what would need to happen for that to effectively work? And we spent a few months just kind of toying with the idea, testing it in conversations with users on lives like this. I touted it just to kind of get some feedback if people thought it was a cool idea, if they're like, hey, that's not going to add any value to my life. Luckily, we had a lot of positive feedback. And so once we got settled into the new offices in Boston, we immediately started to shift over, and we're finally able to release this. So at a high level, workflows allows you to create automated rules to tell Aura how to handle and manage your listings. There's no more succinct way to say that. and we can certainly dive into like settings and use cases. But no longer will you have to, make the decision every single time, every single new listing. What strategy do I apply? Having to toggle on repricing, the stuff that you still, again, have to do, you no longer have to. And so with workflows being live, and if you're using the inventory lab integration, which I highly recommend, it's fully automated now. There's nothing left for you to do, which is fantastic.
That's killer. And I know that we've talked a little bit about this. There are other things we can do too, like resetting our prices or raising the price, or all there. Honestly, there's really, as long as you guys have a rule for it, there's really nothing we can't do, as long as we can set up an automation for it. And I think that's what's absolutely killer, because I think what you're going to see, I'm not going to see it, unfortunately, but what you're going to see is, I think you're going to see some really interesting ways that users come up with to use this.
Yeah, and we're already seeing a few interesting use cases. I've had a lot of users say, hey, what do you recommend? I have 2 recommendations that we can definitely dive into that, just bar none, I think it's a good fit, and I think it's going to help. But there are going to be use cases that we just can't see, right? Like, it's one thing to have 2 nerdy guys sitting on their computers playing around with ideas, but to have thousands upon thousands of users actually build out, like, the collective intelligence of every Aura user is pretty interesting. So I'm curious to see some new ideas. There are things that, I have some theories. Actually, Chris, me and you were talking about it last time we talked about workflows when you were taking a look at the beta, and I'm like, that sounds like a great idea. I don't know, like maybe it will have a positive impact. So, at a high level, I think there's really two ways you can look at workflows. The first one is the way it was designed, which was how do I reduce the amount of manual labor and tasks that you, the user, have to do? That's the major win. But what's interesting is secondarily, and something I didn't consider until the beta was released and we had users testing it, was the fact that maybe, or the theory, should I say, that maybe a workflow can work in tandem with a strategy to increase performance. And that starts to unlock some interesting ideas. So, we're in the beta version. I would still call it the beta version. It's live for everybody, which is awesome. We're not charging extra for it. And I say beta in the sense of, we have 2 triggers and 4 actions. We want to expand that. You were having tons of, feedback and conversations with users using it. And you guys just have amazing ideas. It's like, hey, could we filter by this? Could we trigger by that? I'm like, yes, that's amazing. So we have a lot more in store for that feature. I think that feature is really going to become like, I guess you would call it like a pillar of the company. But it's definitely a feature that has not really been done yet. And repricing is repricing at the end of the day. And once you're at instant repricing, you can't get better than instant repricing. Now what starts to matter is the strategy that you're deploying, right? How you're changing your pricing, but then the things around it. That's where I'm getting really interesting or interested in these days is not just the repricing itself, but the things that exist around that. That's where we can actually start to innovate and create some new things that just have not existed quite yet.
That's fascinating. Well, let's dig in a little bit about like how they work and all of that. And then guys, if you have questions or thoughts or anything like that, make sure to drop them in the chat. I'll make sure that we have some time to grill Dillon before we're all done with this as well. So
yeah, and I'm gonna give a huge shout out to Phil asking me about the Boston weather. It is phenomenal. I'm actually in Florida right now. For people who don't know, we actually started as a company fully remote. Me and my co-founder James worked on this company for the first 1.5 years without meeting in person. And now we have co-located offices in Boston. We're actually hiring three roles right now: back-end engineer, front-end engineer, and a product designer. So a lot of cool stuff coming. But yeah, huge shout out to Phil. Awesome. So at a high level, let's talk about the how does this function? How does this work? Right? We get it conceptually, but let's get a little bit more tactical here. A workflow requires 2 things minimal to work. It requires 1, a trigger, 2, a single action, or at least 1 action. So a trigger right now we have 2. We have time of day, which can either be repeating. So you can say every day at this time, Monday through Friday, or only on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at midnight, do this thing. Or it can be a specific time and date. So you can say next Thursday at 8 a.m., do this thing and then stop. So that's trigger number 1. I think that's a very interesting one. But one that really gets me excited and one that really saves a ton of time over time for users is the secondary trigger, which is new listing. So it's not necessarily when a listing goes live, as in the inventory goes active. It's more so when we get the listing itself, which typically will happen before inventory goes live. Why does that matter? It enables you to say, okay, for every new listing, I want you to do a few things for me. 1, I want you to filter. So this is where we're going to get into the action blocks, and I'll describe the 4 in a second. We'll visually walk through this as well. Let's say you want to assign strategy A if the SKU contains FBA, because it's your FBA strategy. But instead, you want to assign strategy B if the SKU contains MFN for your merchant fulfilled items. You can do that with a filter block, which is fantastic. So now we can create this system where we're routing. I'm using a routing analogy for whatever reason, but depending on what's in the SKU, the title, so on and so forth, we can assign the correct strategy automatically, toggle on repricing. And again, if you're using that inventory lab integration, import your cost, which means now if your strategy is automatically calculating your min price, you did nothing. So once we have this workflow created, all you have to do to trigger like 5 things happening in Aura is list your inventory in inventory lab the way that you already have to do. So that singular task that you have to do, regardless of anything, triggers everything else. Beautiful, this domino effect of you got so much more done. And I think from my perspective, why this gets me excited for users is it gives you leverage for your time. So now you're able to get way more done for a reduced amount of time. That's pretty exciting. Now, to switch gears over to the actions, we have 4 actions at the current moment. Number 1 is a filter block. This is very, very important. This enables you to basically create, like, if we want to use a container analogy, every listing within the trigger is container number 1, top level. But filter blocks allow you to say, okay, within that container, there could be smaller containers, right? Okay, well, let's treat each smaller container in a different way. A filter block enables you to do that either by the SKU or the title contains a bit of text, which you get to say, right? It might say Kohl's, Walmart, FBA, so on and so forth, a date even. It could be by marketplace. That's important. You might want to assign strategy A for your main marketplace, but if you also sell in, Mexico, you might use a different strategy. Perfect. We can do that. Or by strategy, which gets kind of interesting. Number 2, pause repricing. The reason why we initially jumped into this project was we had a bunch of users saying, Dillon, can you take my price to my max price overnight? We were a bit hesitant at first, only because we're big proponents of the oscillation strategy, which means we're actually going to take your price to your max price every time you hit your min price. In doing so, we create this oscillation or a wave. That going to max price at midnight is essentially doing the same thing, but 1 time per day. Well, with an oscillation strategy, we can do it multiple times per day. So we were kind of hesitant. We're kind of already doing that here, but there's more to it. So 1, we wanted to obviously give that feature or give that functionality to users who were requesting it. But instead of building just that one thing, we built out this entire automation suite, so to speak. So 1, pause repricing allows you to say, for a duration, let's say 5 hours, do something. It could absolutely go, take it to your max price, or what's I think more appropriate, the buy box plus 30 to 40%. So just whatever the buy box price is at the moment of trigger, raise my price above the buy box by 30 to 40%, hold it there for my duration. And once that duration is complete, go back to repricing. Very cool, very, very awesome. Number 3, assign strategy. This is very cool, right? So I talked earlier about a use case of, for every new listing, assigning a strategy. You still have to do that in Aura. Now you can set a default strategy under the marketplaces page, but that makes the assumption you only have 1 default. You might have 3 defaults. You might have a default dependent upon certain situations or criteria. So this set strategy allows you to not only set the first strategy. So let's say it has no strategy, it just came in, we set it, that's awesome. But what about the fact that, let's say between midnight and 4 a.m. your time, you want to change your strategy, or you want to change the listings that are assigned to strategy A and assign them to strategy B for 4 hours, and then switch that back after the 4 hours is done. So this allows you to update the strategy given whatever trigger you're currently using. And then the 4th one, very important, toggle repricing, right? So you can toggle repricing on, you can toggle it off. When you put those 4 actions and those 2 triggers together, you have a lot of opportunities for what you want to build. So what I did not want to build is a very regimented, structured, here are 3 workflows you can build. I didn't want to do that because it makes too many assumptions. Instead, I wanted to say, here's some Lego blocks, go play. Because listen, you're probably smarter than I am. You got a lot of great ideas, and I don't want to limit what you're capable of doing that soon. So it's built to be expanded over time. Again, taking that feedback, right? So we can dive into some questions at a high level before we kind of walk through, the actual app and stuff like that. If we have any, I think I have those pulled up over here too. But Chris, see at the moment.
I don't see a whole lot right now. I know it's a busy day, being it's Q4, it's the day before Thanksgiving.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I was actually just thinking of this while you were talking. I mean, essentially we could build out all kinds of workflows. And one of them I was thinking about is something I do personally, and something I tell people to do is I'm a fan of getting rid of inventory at 90 days.
Right. Yeah.
And so essentially, if I have a describer in the SKU, maybe it's the month or maybe it's what quarter I purchased it in, I could essentially automate because I have a liquidation strategy.
Yeah. Right.
So I could go from my main strategy is, I call it buy box dominion, okay, because I want to dominate the buy box. But maybe I want to then liquidate at 90 days, and I could essentially automate that. I mean, there's really no way to, there's all kinds of ways that we could take these Lego blocks and put them together, which is just fascinating to me.
Yeah. One of the triggers I want to build is age, right? So just explicitly say when the inventory is greater than or equal to 90 days, do this action, which in this case would be set strategy. But you brought up a good point. You can kind of do that now, just not in that exact same way. So if you put in, let's say the month and date, or I'm sorry, the month and year, that might be a good thing to include in the SKU. That way you can trigger that. So what I would do is I would probably have it say, once a day. Well, let's see here. You would actually not, that would not be repeating. So what I would do is I would have to create a new one for each month. So at the coming up at the end of the month, I would then push it out 2 months, right? Because you want that 90 days. So I would set a non-repeating time of day trigger, and I would say in 2 months, because we need that 1 month batch to kind of be good to go. In 2 months, trigger filter block by SKU, containing that the month and year, if that's the syntax you're going to use, and then it would be set strategy, and then you just set the strategy to liquidation strategy. So you can do that now. That's the cool part. It's not as clean as I would like it to be. I would like to explicitly say trigger on age. That way, the moment it happens, you're good. But that's the cool part, right? Like I didn't even consider that until we're talking here. I'm like, oh yeah, we could totally build that. A little bit more work. Like you're gonna have to do that for every single month. But not the end of the world, right? At least until we can get the age kind of rolled out. So definitely a lot of options there. And that's what's fun is I want you to be able to play, and I want you to say, okay, what do I currently do now? Not what can I do? That comes later. I think that's a secondary thing for just getting started with Aura and workflows. I would first say, what do I currently do or have been doing? Can workflows do that? Because immediately it's going to take your workload and lower it. Then we can get to, well, what else could it do that I would do just because I now can?
Right.
That's where it gets kind of fun, and you get to kind of nerd out a little bit. But first, start with what you're currently doing and save yourself some time, because at the end of the day, you don't make money when you're selling. Oddly enough, you make money when you're buying, in my opinion. So if I can, let's say you're spending 2 hours a week in Aura, if I can reduce that to 15 minutes, you get to reuse that time either to spend time with family, because that's kind of important, or sourcing, kind of important as well, right? So I'm trying to craft more features that basically reduces your workload so you can spend it sourcing or just enjoying life, because that's a fun thing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. But we can dive in and just kind of go over the features, visualize this, because I know it's an easy high level concept to understand, but like to visualize it and see it being built out, I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah, okay. Absolutely.
All right, so I'm going to share my screen here. Okay, perfect. All right, let me shift over. Okay.
I'm going to go ahead and make that bold size there.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and jump into the workflows page here. And we're going to start at a high level. So I have two here, the two examples, but we're going to build the first example together. The one that I think makes a lot of sense, which is that new listing kind of workflow. So at a high level, we're going to create a workflow. And we're already presented with the trigger, right? We have one of two triggers. For our use case, we're going to do new listing. Now we need to add actions. So this is where it gets complex. This is where logic starts to kind of become important. But I'm going to walk you through a few tricks here. So let's talk at a high level. What do we want to accomplish? So let's say I have 3 strategies. And so I have a strategy A, B, and C. Now I want to assign strategy A if the SKU contains FBA. And I want to assign strategy B if the SKU contains MFN. And I want to assign strategy C to everything else. Now that sounds pretty simple. It gets a little here, and I'm going to walk through that. So we need a filter block. Okay, so we can do that. Now I want to filter by SKU, and we're going to say that FBA. Now this is not case sensitive, so I'm going to leave that lowercase. And again, I'm making the assumption here that FBA is in the SKU. So we have our filter block. Now, filter blocks are very, very important. Nesting is very, very important. So if I have a action block that is not nested, and I'll show you what I mean by nested in a second, the filter block becomes irrelevant. So I have two options here. I can click add action here at the bottom or within the filter block. If I click that plus icon within the filter block, it will auto nest the action for me. I highly recommend doing that. It's just going to save you a little bit of effort. So we want to assign the strategy. Now we mentioned we want to assign strategy A if it is FBA. Okay, let's just make the assumption here, test 2 is going to be strategy A. So this is what I mean by nesting. So anything that is nested beneath a filter block will only execute against the listings that trigger in this filter block. Now I can change this. So I can move it to the highest level. Now the filter block does not matter. The way it is currently set, every listing that comes through will be assigned test 2, or in our example, strategy A. It's not what we want. So we're gonna nest that there. We're good now. So let's repeat this again for strategy B with merchant fulfilled listings. Again, filter block, SKU, MFN. And we're going to repeat here, set strategy. And we're going to do test 1. This is going to represent our strategy B. Now we have a little dilemma. I'm going to walk you through how you might naturally do this. So we were assigning strategy A and strategy B, but now we need to assign strategy C to everything else. Now, what a lot of people will naturally do is say, okay, well, that's sequential, right? 1 leads to 2, leads to 3, leads to 4. So I'm going to go ahead and say, you know what? For everything else, I want to assign strategy C. Let's say this is strategy C. We're good, Dylan, right? Wrong. We actually have a problem here. So here's how this is going to play out. First, all the SKUs containing FBA will be assigned strategy A. Second, all the SKUs containing MFN will be assigned strategy B. But then, or we'll run this action and assign strategy C to every listing, including these. This becomes very important. Sequence matters. So how do we fix that? If we drag this up here, the sequence actually works in our favor. So here's what's going to happen now. Strategy C gets us applied to every single listing, but strategies containing FBA will change from C to A, and then strategies containing MFN will change from C to B, and what is left over? Everything assigned to strategy C that did not get assigned to A or B. I know that seems super complex. Welcome to logic. But I think this is very important to highlight. So as a rule of thumb, and by the way, we have best practices. So if you go to help.goaura.com, there is literally a support doc there called workflows best practices that's going to highlight some of these kind of subtle nuances here. So as a general rule, as a best practice, anything you want to assign to all of the listings needs to come first. So, okay, we're assigning our strategies. We're good here. We got the sequence correct. What are we kind of missing? Well, I need to go ahead and actually toggle reprice. So we don't like redundancy. We don't like to waste a lot of time. So I'm gonna do new action, toggle reprice, and we're gonna toggle that to on. I'm not gonna do that in every single section. I only need to do it one time. Now again, I want to assign, or I'm sorry, I want to enable repricing on all the listings based on the best practice. That actually needs. The way I want you to think about this is you want to start with a very a very general view, which is all the listings, right? Going back to that container idea. You're starting with the top level container. What do we want to do to all those listings? Okay, do that first. Then you say, okay, is there a subset, a smaller group within this group that I want to do something different with? If that is true, then you do that. So we're going from the most general down to the most granular. If you can follow that logic, that's going to be your best bet here. So if we do that correctly, we're good. So now we're going to enable repricing on all the listings that come through. We're going to assign strategy A if the SKU contains FBA. We'll assign strategy B if the SKU contains MFN, and we will assign strategy C to every other listing. So now we're good. Now here's what's interesting. I'm making the assumption you have 3 default strategies. For the vast majority of users, you have 1. So we can reduce this. A lot of people do. So I generally recommend, I think this is like a good aside, I generally recommend that you have, I would say, 3 strategies. I think that's a real sweet spot, and I'll stop sharing my screen here just to kind of focus in on that. You need three. Anything that is okay, but it starts to add more complexity, and you're optimized for certain situations. Not bad, but again, let's talk the average Amazon seller. First thing you're going to need is your default strategy. We highly recommend the oscillation strategy. We've talked about this beforehand. There's tons of videos on how we recommend doing that. Reach out to support, we'll set it up for you. That's going to cover like 80% of your inventory, in my opinion. You want to build robust strategies. Too many sellers get stuck in this idea of over optimizing for every situation. Well, what about this? It doesn't work that way, unfortunately. So that main strategy is going to work for, again, 80% of your inventory. Strategy number 2 is going to handle the other 20%. The difference between strategy A and strategy B in this example usually comes down to min price. A lot of people have good buckets or think of their inventory in buckets. I think that's important. There's certainly the category or business model type buckets. So you have, okay, this is my wholesale bucket. This is my RA OA bucket. But we can generalize that a little bit more. It usually comes down to price and cost, right? So for 80% of my inventory, if I get 30% ROI, I'm happy. Great, we're good. That last 20%, you might have paid really low amounts, right? So you're like, 30% is nothing for that 20%. Actually, I need 60% minimum. Okay, 2 strategies, we're good to go. How they perform, exactly the same. The only difference between strategy A and B, from what I generally see, is the min price. Nice and easy. Then your last third strategy, liquidation. I know it's never a fun thing to talk about, like just breaking even to get your money back, but welcome to reality. Welcome to being an Amazon seller.
Welcome to retail, happen. Period.
Yes, literally. So I think having a liquidation strategy is it's paramount, right? It saves you a ton of time. I think it's too naive to say I'm not going to need that. You will, I promise you. Especially as you get bigger, you need it even more because you're just dealing with such large volumes. So it becomes very, very important. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and we're going to shift back over on that same idea. So let me shift back over here. I do that side tangent to illustrate the fact that this seems very complex. And I chose this example for that reason. I want to show you, listen, this can be complex, but I don't want to overwhelm the vast majority of you who you're like, Dillon, I have one strategy. What do I do? Here's what's great. Let's say you have one strategy. Here's what you need to do. That's it. 2 actions. Enable repricing. Set the strategy. Assuming your strategy is automatically calculating your min price, and again, you were integrated with Inventory Lab, that's it. That's all you need to do. So cool thing about workflows, very similar to strategies, they can be as complex or as simple as you need them to be. I don't believe in complexity for complexity's sake. So don't feel like, okay, well, because it can do this whole thing, I should. You shouldn't. Don't make your life more complex than it needs to be. Let's start with something simple, right? If you have one strategy, awesome. We don't need to use a filter block. We're good to go. We can hit continue. We can name this. I love putting emojis in my names of both strategies and workflows. Cannot tell you why, but it's a nice visual. Let's use cheese for cheddar, because why not? New listing. Let's just say auto rules. It's kind of cool. We can enable that, and then we can quickly review. Okay, what is the trigger we're using? We're saying for every new listing imported into Aura, not when it goes live, again, very important detail, I want you to do these 2 actions. Toggle on repricing, set my strategy, we're done. We hit create. And now moving forward, I no longer have to do that. That one strategy, or I'm sorry, workflow, will save you the most amount of time, because it's the one thing you have to do for every single listing. Now you don't, which is kind of nice. You get to tell Aura, listen, here's how I would do it. Here you go. Here's the workflow. Enable it, move on, let Aura do the work for you moving forward. Very important. Chris, any questions on that example there?
No. Other than, I think we should point out that if you have not set this up, this is like the first thing that needs to be set up.
Yeah.
This has saved me a ton of time myself. And I can imagine people who have a bunch more SKUs than I do. It's probably got to save hours every week.
Right. And don't feel like you need to wait to be, a high volume seller to use this. Honestly, like, listen, if you're moving 50 units a month, still set this up. Like,
Hmm.
set this up now so that as you're growing, as you scale, it doesn't matter. It's not more work for you. Here's what's interesting about features and tools like this. Whether you're doing 100,000 units per month or 10 units per month, this is still impactful. Now, it is more impactful at 100,000 than 10. But if you can set it up at 10 and then scale to 100,000, didn't do any extra work. The workload was automatically managed for you, and that's what gets pretty interesting. So with that, we'll jump into the second type of strategy, right? So Chris, we were talking about this too. Okay, so we can handle, and we're already now handling new listings automatically. Awesome, it's going to save us a ton of time. Let's talk performance now. Let's talk about testing some new stuff. So I have this morning penny spike here. We're basically going to recreate this, but let's do it at midnight. So we're going to create workflow. We're going to choose a different trigger. In this time, we're actually going to use a time of day occurs, and we're going to do repeating. Again, you can do repeating or non-repeating, and we're going to say Monday through Sunday, so every day of the week. And this is very important. We use UTC time, not your local time. We just default everything to UTC like Amazon does, makes life way easier. This will default to the current time when clicking it. So 1950 UTC is 2:50 EST PM. So I know that 5 a.m. UTC is midnight EST. So I'm going to go to 5 a.m. So at midnight EST, my time, that's when I want that to trigger every single day of the week. I want to do something. Let's say at midnight, I want to raise my price 30% above the buy box, but only on some listings. And I want to do that for 30 minutes. Well, because I said some listings, I need a filter block. Very important, because you might not want to do this for all of your listings. So I want to filter by strategy. I'm going to say, you know what, only for the listings that are on my test 2 strategy and the SKU contains Nike. Actually, let's do this. Let's do FBA because we'll kind of stick with that theme. So if the SKU contains FBA and the strategy currently assigned is test 2, we're going to do pause repricing. And I need a duration. So I'm going to do 30 minutes. I don't really like, 4 to 5 hours. I think that creates a little bit too much, static. You're not really moving around. When it comes to pricing, you want a lot of activity. Actually, a lot of people think, oh, I just wanted to sit here. Actually, you don't. You want it to kind of fluctuate a bit. So I'm not going to do it too long. 30 minutes is fine. You can absolutely do it for 1 to 2 minutes as well. You can do it for 30 hours. You can do it for 50,000 hours, theoretically. Just would not recommend that. So a few options here, right? We can take it straight to the min price, the max price, take it directly to the buy box price, assuming it's within your min max, because min max are obviously paramount there. They take priority. Do not reprice just means it's going to hold it exactly at the current price when this triggers. But I'm going to do customized price. I'm going to choose the buy box price plus, and we're going to do 30%. So at midnight, Monday through Sunday, every day of the week, for 30 minutes, only on the listings that have a SKU containing FBA and using this strategy test 2 will have their price raised from the calculation of buy box or the current buy box value plus the 30%. Obviously, if this calculation is outside your max range, or will just take you to your max range for that duration, and we're good. Now we can get super complex, right? Again, I can have like 13 filter blocks and say, okay, well, if let's say I do have those 3 strategies, I might want to do something different for each strategy. So let's say we're using the liquidation idea. Maybe I want to do something for those. So I might do a filter block here. I'm going to do strategy again. I'm pretty sure I have a liquidation strategy here. There we go. So we'll say everything in my liquidation strategy, no matter where they are at, I want to pause repricing for, let's say, 10 minutes, kind of short burst here. And I want to do customized price, and I want to do buy box minus, let's say, 5%. Right, I'm trying to move them. Right, I got the buy box, that's awesome, but like economics, the lower the price, the more sales I'm going to get. Just Let's do that once a week at midnight, right? I'm trying to basically add a little bit of juice, a little bit of fuel, if you will, to my liquidation strategy. We talked earlier about the fact that, in my opinion, there's two versions or two like high level use cases of workflows. One is to really help you on the workload standpoint. The other is really to help on the performance side. This workflow is designed for that performance side. Obviously, it's still going to save you time because you're not manually doing this, but this is kind of the main use case here. So we can do that. Okay, not a problem. So we're going to handle one small group of our listings in one way, but then the other small group in a completely different way. This is where filter blocks really, really shine. Again, complex, simplistic as you need it to be. I would err on the on simplicity more so than complexity. So we can do that. We can name this guy, and we're going to say midnight. So we'll use actually I have a moon here, kind of a moon. There we go. If it works, fantastic. And we'll say midnight price adjustments. We can enable that. Again, we can review it. So at midnight EST, Monday through Sunday, every day of the week, if the SKU contains FBA and is using a specific strategy, in our case, test 2, raise our price 30% above the current buy box price for 30 minutes. But if the strategy is liquidation for every SKU, using that strategy, lower my price by 5% below the buy box for 10 minutes, and then go back. Once these durations are done, go back to what you're doing. We're good to go. So we got that created. It's enabled. Awesome. So this really is a building block style feature, right? What I want you to understand is you're starting with your idea of what do I currently do, and then encoding that, right? Just saying, okay, or like I would start with a piece of paper, and write it out. Like, when do you assign strategy A versus strategy B? Quantify that. Say, oh, well, only if my cost is less than $10, or if it's FBA, I assign a different strategy than merchant fulfilled. Awesome. Write that down, because if you can write down why you make your decisions, heck, you could take a screenshot of that piece of paper, send it to us in support, and we'll be like, we got you. We'll go build out that workflow right now. Just like we do with strategies, right? Like, if you can tell us what you are hoping to achieve, we can turn that into a strategy or into a workflow. We have a ton of support documentation on the feature itself. So if you want to dive deeper into filter blocks, it's not a problem. If you want to dive deeper into these two use cases, I have full guides of, okay, here's how we walk through this exact example. There's a lot of, not a lot, there's a few subtle nuances which we already talked about, like, starting with things that are globally applied, so to speak, should always be at the top, not at the bottom. Best practices, all that stuff is at help.goora.com. And obviously utilize us in support. Ask questions, don't feel like you're annoying us. I keep telling people, like, you can reach out and say, Dillon, I have like 20 minutes worth of work in Aura to get done, and I only have 2 minutes. Spend that 2 minutes telling me what you need to get done, and we'll just do it for you, and we'll have it done in the next 10 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. No, we actually spend a lot more time just helping and doing work for users, because we get you're busy. Like, we're here to serve you, so we don't say support as in like, we'll just answer your questions. Certainly we do that. But if you need help understanding deeper, if you're like, Dillon said this one thing and I'm not quite sure like what he meant by that, reach out. Like, we'll go super deep. Like, we'll record Loom videos. It doesn't matter. We got you covered. So I know for a lot of people, this is going to be a very exciting thing, and you're gonna be like, I just want to dig in, right? Like, that's how I am, or how I was when I discovered Zapier or like Siri shortcuts on my iPhone. Like, let me dive in. Other people are going to be a little intimidated and overwhelmed. Please don't be. Don't feel like you have to immediately jump in and build out all these things and just know what you're doing. I don't expect that of you. So, feel free to take your time. Feel free to start with something simple, right? Again, little notepad, write down, I do X, Y, and Z for every new listing. Write that down. Work with us in support and say, hey, here's what I'm trying to build. Here's my version of it. Did I do it right? Did I do it wrong? We'll be very quick to jump in there and say, listen, you wanted to do this action, just for this subset of listings, but you actually didn't nest it underneath the filter block. That way you're learning, right? So don't feel like you're alone here. Don't feel like you just have to build it and set it free, so to speak, and hope it goes well. You don't. Workflows are advanced. I know it's a very easy thing to kind of talk about and demonstrate to you, but they can be advanced. And keep in mind, Workflows are not like strategies. If you make a bad decision, so to speak, in building your strategy, that's a relatively easy fix, right? It's a very hard thing to mess up, in my opinion. Workflows are different. Workflows will make actual changes. So you can absolutely jump in there and say, move 100% of my listings from these 15 well-tailored strategies to this one strategy. It will execute that and it will do it. So, if you're not confident, reach out and say, hey, here's what I'm trying to do. Does this actually make sense? Because that can be a difficult thing and we can't just reverse it. We can't just like undo that. We can jump in and build, reversing workflows only in certain circumstances. So if we can, build out the logic in the workflow, we can definitely use it as a tool in support to reverse some problems. But don't feel like you need to rush on it. Take your time, kind of play with it, think it through.
Mm-hmm. I gotta give you guys a huge hand on the level of support.
Thank you.
Because I mean, at the price point that you guys are at, which I feel is affordable for most Amazon sellers, I mean, the support is second to none. And hopefully people know that and take advantage of it when necessary.
And literally, I don't care what your question is. Like, you are not like annoying us. I hate when users like, oh, I just feel like I'm bothering. You're not bothering us. We're here for this reason.
Yeah.
I keep saying, when you join Aura, you are getting a team of repricing nerds in your company. Please use us, not just for knowledge. We have a ton of that as well. Use us for work. We're here to help you. We're never going to tell you no. The way we set up the company from a cultural standpoint, I didn't want users to feel alone. I've been a seller at a high level. My co-founder has been a seller at an even higher level than myself. Finn has been a small seller. That's actually how we all met. So we all get it. We've all used tools where it can do so many things, but I just don't know. I don't know where to go for help. I feel alone, and I don't want you to feel alone. I don't want you to feel like this is a lot, and I don't want you to feel like you can't use repricing or any of the sub features, so to speak, within Aura because you just don't know yet. Let us teach you. Let us help you. I would rather us do the work for you and you get the benefits of repricing than you not reprice. Because I've seen the delta between somebody who does use it and somebody who doesn't use it, period. We're talking like a 30 to 40% increase in sales, going from no repricing to repricing. That's on average. So it is impactful. So if you're kind of on the fence, you're like, it's a little overwhelming. That's okay. Jump in there. We'll work with you one-on-one. If I need to jump into an onboarding session with you, I will. So please don't feel alone. Customer support, customer success is one of the things that I refuse to outsource. I mean, we pay Finn pretty well. I mean, like he's a real person. We have an actual office. We're not outsourcing that stuff. I, as one of the two co-founders full-time while in school, did and built our customer support kind of structure, knowledge, processes myself, and a lot of people would say, oh, well, because you're the founder, that's not worth your time. But it clearly was, because we were able to put Finn in that seat and him from, week one, just be crushing it. Because listen, this is like a little side tangent. If you're the business owner, please understand that you doing the job first means that you will make the job itself better before you hand it to another human being. Please don't get stuck in this idea of I'm just going to outsource it. Make it better first. If you can make it better, it will save you time and it will save you money in the long run, because when you hire somebody, this is set for success. It's less about this person. It's more about this. Because I can take an average person, give them an amazing task that is built for them to succeed, and they will become an amazing person. Random side chant or a tangent, I get it, but super important. It's super important.
Yeah, it really is, and it's in all aspects of your business.
100%.
You can outsource sourcing, but make sure you're good at it first.
Yeah.
And you can and you can make the other person good at it, and then go work on something even higher level. So
yeah, 100%.
We do have. It looks like we have one question.
Okay.
And then I know it's the day before Thanksgiving, so I want to get you out of here.
You're good.
So is Aura good for repricing books?
For new books, yes. For used books, I would say it depends. Like most, most repricing tools struggle with used books. The reason is the Amazon API limitations. So although you get to see all the data as a human, systems only get to see the data through the API, right? So Amazon doesn't send every single offer on a listing. It sends the top 20, which really top just means lowest 20. So used books, used media is fairly similar, not as bad, I would say, where you have so many, penny sellers, right? Excuse me, you have so many people that are using that method to increase seller feedback, things of that nature. So what ends up happening is those very low price offers clog up those top 20 offers. So repricing tools become, quote unquote, blind to the offers and values that matter, like the buy box, like the lowest FBA offer. So I say it depends because it depends on the number of sellers or offers on that listing. On used books where you don't have 80 sellers on it, it's not a problem. So it's less about books. It's actually not the category. It's the fact that that category has so many people on so many listings, and there's not a lot of movement. If there's a lot of movement, it would not be a problem. So yeah, I can't tell you we're great at it. It just depends. If there's not that many sellers, we'll crush it. If you're looking at used book listings in Aura and you see that your position is 20 plus, it's going to struggle. It's absolutely going to struggle.
Yeah, and I mean that's a hard thing for those of us who aren't really. uh, I'm like I'm sort of a nerd. I'm like a nerd light, where I understand a
Okay.
lot of these things, but for the regular Joe, you don't understand that. Oh, well, I
I
can
know.
see this on the computer. Why can't the software see
Yeah.
it? Well, there's APIs and there's all kinds of blind spots that
hmm
that we may not have that computers have because of limitations.
Yeah,
You know.
it gets kind of confusing, right? So you can be looking at the listing on Amazon.com and be like, it says $30.
Hmm.
My offer says $30 right now, but Aura and Seller Central will say $28.
Hmm.
So it's important to understand Amazon will cache. In other words, short-term store information on their pages. This is a normal thing that happens. So it's less important for you to look on, well, what does Amazon.com show? It actually doesn't matter. What does Seller Central first and foremost show as the buy box and my price? Secondarily, what does Aura show? Because Aura is going to, mimic and show you what Seller Central shows you. So, we're not reading data from Amazon.com. We're reading data from their system, which is
Hmm.
faster, right? So a lot of people are like, oh, my price isn't moving. I'm like, actually, we repriced you like 10 times in 5 minutes. You didn't see it because they actually couldn't reflect it as fast.
Right.
Right. So there's a difference between, making very quick changes and then Amazon reflecting those changes, although they are happening. I can't control Amazon reflecting the changes on the actual listing, the public listing, because that's just going to, it depends on the person viewing the page, right? If you're in incognito mode, it's a little bit better. If you've never cached that exact page, you're going to see the most recent update. So what's interesting is we can take 500 computers across the world, all go to the exact same page and see different prices.
Hmm.
It's how the internet works.
Yeah,
So
and different buy boxes and
yeah,
all kinds of
regional,
things. Yeah,
100%.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
I wish they would unlock, through the API regional buy boxes. That would get incredibly complex because now we're doing in parallel. Let's make the assumption there's 10 regional buy boxes. I'm now not running repricing on that SKU one time. I'm running it 10 times in parallel for the same SKU.
wouldn't that
With
be
that,
fascinating?
it would be insane. I would
That would
love
be
to do it.
so cool.
Yeah, I would love to do that. Because I've had users be like, hey, like, could you guys reprice me for regional? Unfortunately, we can't because Amazon does not share that. So Amazon doesn't say like, here's the regional buy boxes. They just say, here's the buy box. That's it.
Hmm.
So if they ever do that, we will absolutely update because I want to do that. That would be insane. But I can say, obviously increasing your inventory amounts will obviously help by itself. So a lot of people think that it's just price. I don't believe that. And I run a repricing tool. I think it's very important, but it's one of the factors, one of
Hmm.
the variables. So one, use repricing if you're not using it. Two, if you want to add fuel to that repricer, make sure you're having adequate seller feedback. I'm not just talking quality, I'm talking quantity as well. but also look at the depth of inventory. Amazon really is pushing depth, man. That's why regional buy boxes exist, right? The higher amounts of volume you have of a SKU, the more distribution you're going to get, the more regional buy boxes you're going to get. So I like to tell sellers when they jump in, like, all right, cool, I got this all set up, we're good to go here, right? I'm like, here, yes. Let's talk about the things outside of Aura that you should absolutely be doing that will help Aura do better, right? So I think it's very important.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Kyle, Grant, do you offer coaching? Typically, I do not offer one-to-one coaching. Not typically. I've thought about it, but I haven't found a way to make it both affordable and lots of factors there. So typically, no. But if you have a question, my email's always open, man. You're more than welcome to hit me there, and I read and reply to every single email I get, and that's Chris@cleartheshelf.com.
That's kind of how I am. It's funny. I get asked that because I have a deep background with wholesale, so I get asked all the time for like one-on-one coaching, and I'm like, same thing. Like, I would love to, but like what I would have to charge just for my time just would not make sense. And that's not because I'm awesome. It's just like there's so much going on. But kind of likewise, man. It's just, if it can be asynchronous, love it.
Yeah. So, dude, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Likewise.
And if you guys have not tried out Aura, there is a link either above or below this video where you can get a discount and a trial and all of that good stuff. Just use the code CTS. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Wherever you're watching this, please do make sure to smash the like button for the respective algorithms so that a few more people can see this because I do think it was incredibly informative. So with that, guys, happy Thanksgiving. Have a great holiday. And Dillon, thanks so much, man. Enjoy the time in the warmish weather down here in Florida for the holiday, man.
Thanks, Chris. You as well.
All right. Bye-bye.